Now let us have Chapter 4. Chapter 4 is all about audit procedures or substantive testing. Audit procedures may be a very broad term, as risk assessment procedures, test of controls, and substantive tests may all be called audit procedures. However, when we say audit procedures, we generally refer to the substantive testing procedures. Okay, you should remember that the main objective of the audit is to gather sufficient evidence to provide a basis for opinion regarding the financial statements being audited. So this is actually the most important part in the audit process. After that, after the substantive audit procedures, all you have to do is to just prepare for the audit report. Of course, essentially, pwede rin na pagkatapos nun, post-audit responsibilities ka. Pero primarily, the highlight of the audit process is the substantive testing. After the yung mga natapos na natin na napag-usapan, pre-engagement, audit planning, consideration of internal controls, yun, dito na tayo sa substantive testing. Management assertions are important in making the audit procedures because these are the subject matter being verified. You design audit procedures to obtain sufficient appropriate evidence about the conformity of these assertions to the PFRS. So financial statements are not statement of facts. They are collection of claims and assertions made explicitly or implicitly by the entity's management about the recognition, measurement, presentation, and disclosure of information in the financial statements. So pagka sinasabi mong assertion, ito ay sinasabi ng management. Sinasabi ng management about the financial information of the company. And therefore, sakop nito yung kung magkano, kung ano yung mga nakalagay at kung paano pre-present yung mga items in the financial statements. Along with this, sinasabi rin ng management na yung financial statements are free from material misstatements. And along with this, merong mga specific na sinasabi pa yung management regarding the items or regarding its general assertion na pertaining to the financial statement. Una, existence and occurrence, that the assets, liabilities, and equities exist as a result of the occurrence of past transactions and events. Ibig sabihin, nangyari yung transaction at nagkaroon ng asset, liability, and equity dahil sa pangyayaring ito. Sinasabi rin ng management na kumpleto yung mga nakalagay dun sa financial statements, that all assets, liabilities, and equities resulting from transactions and events that should have been recorded have been recorded. So lahat ng mga pag-aari, utang at saka mga equity ay nakalagay. Lahat ng mga dapat ilagay ay nailagay sa financial statements. Walang labis, walang kulang. And also, sinasabi rin ng management that the valuation and allocation made as a measurement for the items in the financial statements are correct or fairly stated, so that the assets, liabilities, and equity are included in the financial statements at appropriate amounts or values. Isa pang assertion ng management ay rights and obligations, that the entity holds or controls the rights to the assets and liabilities are obligations of the entity. Then also, that the presentation and disclosure of the assets and liabilities of the company in the financial statements, they are with the appropriate classification and presentation. Now let us learn about the different types of audit procedures. The acronym to be remembered is E-Korea. E-Korea. I for inspection, C for confirmation, O for observation, R for recalculation, another R for performance, I for inquiry, and A for analytical procedures. The acronym again is E-Korea. Okay, for this part of the discussion, we are going to take up the audit procedures one by one, but we are not going to read all of the formal definitions anymore. If you haven't read them yet, just pause this video and then try to internalize them. For the discussion, we are just going to give a short explanation so that you can easily understand kung ano yung mga items na to. Inspection and observation, parang ano lang to, parehas sila in the sense that you are going to take a look at them by yourselves. Pero kung inspection ang pinag-uusapan, you're talking about records, documents, and the items in the financial statements, a physical examination of the assets. Halimbawa, merong cash, tignan mo kung merong cash. Halimbawa, meron kang lupa, tignan mo yung lupa. Tignan mo yung mga papeles or documents patungkol sa pag-aari mo sa lupa. Whereas observation is pertaining to a process or procedure performed. So, if you would like to take a look at an activity resulting to the balances in the financial statement, like for example, inventory taking, you observe that process, okay? Inspection, it's just yung mga record documents, and asset observation is for processes. Okay, so inquiry and confirmation, well, pareho rin itong dalawang to na magtatanong ka, kaya lang sa inquiry, pag sinabi mong inquiry, it's for persons within or outside the entity. And usually, it's more on the within the entity. Confirmation kasi para sa third party siya. Third party. So, other parties aside from the client company. And meron ka ng, sa confirmation, meron ka ng initial na alam. Okay, ko-confirm mo lang sa third party yung alam mo na. Okay, so itong mga part na to, alam na natin itong mga to kasi yung recalculation, self-explanatory yan. Kino-compute mo kung yung tama ba yung computation ng company. Re-performance, parang kaibahan sa recalculation. Re-performance talks about the execution of procedures na hindi nagko-compute. So ginagawa mo rin yung ginagawa ng management. Recalculation lang kasi more specific computation yung ginagawa. Sa re-performance, hindi computation yung ginagawa. So aside from recalculation or computation, yung re-performance. Halimbawa, dun sa paggamit ng paggawa ng aging of receivables related to the computation of your bad debts expense. Yung pag-age ng receivables, hindi ka nagko-compute doon, di ba? Kundi nag-determine mo yung age of the receivables based on the sales invoice of these receivables. So, tignan mo kung tugma dun sa ginawa ng client yung ginawa mo. And then, analytical procedures, alam na natin to kasi dun pa lang sa risk of material misstatements or dun sa risk assessment procedures, parte na to. But it's also considered one of the types of audit procedures. Kaya lang, hindi naman talaga siya, wala naman siya talagang mapapatunayan na is very specific. Kasi this is just a study of relationships, yung trends and fluctuations. Okay? So, ratios and trends. Yun yung tinitignan mo dito. So that pag tumataas yung gross profit, tapos biglang sa taon na yon, biglang bumaba or hindi tumaas ng the same as before, then probably there could be something wrong regarding your cost of goods sold, particularly inventories, and particularly baka merong mga nawawala na mga inventories. So you have to be more keen or observant regarding the items na na reason why these ratios were not done or were not as you have expected them to be. Okay, so i-categorize lang natin yung lahat ng mga types of audit procedures. Dalawang klase lang yan, test of details at saka analytical procedures. So lahat na ng mga other types of audit procedures, they are all test of details. Yung inspection, confirmation, observation, recalculation, reperformance, and inquiry, test of details yan. Yung test of details, yung actual details of the account balances and classes of transactions, yan yung tinitignan mo. Okay? And then, dalawang klase naman, yung test of details of transaction and test of details of balances. Yung sa test of details of transactions, nangyayari yan, yung transaction mismo ang binibigyan mo ng pansin. This can be applicable for smaller volume of transactions na hindi masyadong mahirap na tignan. Like for example, property, plant, and equipment, bonds payable, and shareholders' equity. Doon naman sa test of details of balances, these are applicable for large volume of transactions. Yung mga pertaining to cash, pertaining to accounts receivables and inventories, syempre, palaging merong transaction yan. So, mas mahirap na i-test yung transactions niyan, kaya tignan mo na lang yung balances. Focus ka doon sa balances. Another very important thing that you need to remember are these two techniques, audit techniques with different direction, tracing and vouching. In tracing, this is the normal flow of events. So the auditor starts with the original documents and traces forward, so forward to the accounting records. This will test the assertion of completeness. So, halimbawa, 5 source documents, tignan mo kung lahat ng 5 yan ay pumapasok. So, forward ka, diba? So, from this 5, tignan mo sa accounting record, ilan mo pumasok. Kung 4 lang, incomplete. 5, yung complete. Vouching, ito naman, if the auditor starts from the accounting records and vouches backwards to the original source documents, this tests the assertion of existence and occurrence. So, vouch back, kabalik pag vouch back. And you would test the assertion of existence. So, from the record, 5 yung nasa record, o tignan mo dun sa source documents, nag-exist ba talaga yung nangyari ba talaga yung 5 yan. Okay? Okay, so this chapter on audit procedures will conclude the preliminaries that we have to discuss before we are going to take up the items in the financial statements one by one. So, planning, risk assessment, internal control, then substantive testing. Now, in taking up the items in the financial statements one by one, we are going to enumerate all of the audit procedures for this specific account titles, and then we are going to make calculations which are somewhat similar to what you have learned in your financial accounting, only that it is on the point of view of the auditor. So mostly, this consists of calculations na pwedeng meron ng preliminary computation, pero you've got to make your own computation and check whether these items were properly measured, presented, and disclosed.